It's time to get down and dirty with 300 Winchester Short Magnum. We just completed a custom rifle build. We're going to follow up on that by talking about the process that I go through when I load precision ammunition. The planning process, the parameters, the selection of the components, the selection of the equipment, and the end-to-end process. Let's get to it. Hey guys, Gavin here from UltimateReloader.com. It is a brisk, cold, really cold winter day here at Ultimate Reloader headquarters. It's about 7 degrees outside, so we're hanging out in the shop loading some precision ammunition. Now, I wanted to do 300 Winchester Short Magnum because Lapua just came out with brass for 300 WSM, and I thought, hey, this is a great prompting. Maybe I need to do a rifle build. I know a lot of you are interested in the cartridge, and that's why I wanted to go a little bit more in depth this time on our precision reloading process. Really guide you through the start to finish planning, implementation, execution, and equip you for success loading custom ammunition to an arbitrary specification. We do this all the time here at Ultimate Reloader. New cartridges, new rifle builds, new components. It's a lot of fun, but it can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming. So, where do I start out? I start out with a planning process that includes things like printing out the SAMI diagram for the cartridge in question. Now, again, I'm building a custom rifle, so I'm really looking at both parts of this diagram. I'm looking at the bottom part first. These are the chamber specifics. And there are some very important parameters that I utilize from this section in the diagram when I go to plan my rifle build and as I'm executing those steps. Then when we go to load ammunition, we want to focus on the top part of the diagram, which is the cartridge specifics. Here I'm going to look at things like what's the maximum cartridge overall length? That's 2.860 inches. For comparison, the 308 Winchester, which is also a short action cartridge, has a maximum cartridge overall length of 2.800 inches. So what's the difference there? Why does 300 WSM get to be 60 thousandths of an inch longer? Well, the answer is it's a different magazine. The 300 WSM magazine, which is actually stamped on this accurate mag here, is going to have a longer internal length than a traditional short action 308 magazine, which should have a hypothetical internal capacity length of 2.800 inches. So I'm looking at maximum cartridge overall length just to make sure that I know how long we can load the ammunition. I'm also looking at the case rim diameter. So this is listed at 0.535 inches. So this is going to be compatible with a Magnum bolt face in the rifle. And we're going to also need shell holders that are for the Magnum bolt face. On our competition primer cedar, that means selecting the appropriate Frankfurt Arsenal or Lee shell holder for Magnum. So on the Forester coax, we have the large shell holder, the universal shell holder. There's kind of two different sizes, the small and the large. And that's going to work with the Magnum bolt face here. This will also work with 308 Winchester. So it's nice to have that kind of more universal shell holder feature. It means that we don't have to constantly switch shell holders, and that's just a nice convenience to have. So other things that we can look at on the SAMI diagram would include the base to datum length and the appropriate diameter here. And when I go over the equipment, I'll talk about the datum dial and how we're going to use that to measure and quantify the shoulder bump when we're loading the ammunition. Okay. So the SAMI diagram, this is free. If you go to SAMI.org, you can download the cartridge specifications and keep that PDF maybe on the desktop of your laptop or something, print off pages as needed. That's what I do. Now that we have kind of that out of the way, we can move on to some of the other considerations. Let's talk about load data. So I went to Hodgdon's website and I looked at load data for 300 WSM, of which there is a very large quantity of data available for, right? For the 300 WSM, one of the things I'm looking at for any cartridge is what is the weight range of bullets that the cartridge can accommodate. For 300 WSM, it's pretty wide. It starts at about 110 grains and goes all the way up to 220 grains. Now, we might be able to load a little bit heavier than that, like 240s or something like that. But in general, that's kind of a good weight range to target. We're going to want to make sure that we know the twist weight of our rifle. I always engrave that onto the barrel when I do a custom build. This is a carbon 6 barrel. It's got 1 in 9 twist, which is typically what people go with for a 300 WSM. Right on the box of bullets, these are Hornady 208 grain ELDMs. We have twist rate 1 in 10. So if we're at 1 in 10 or faster, faster means a lower number, then we're going to have sufficient stability to use these bullets. The encouraging thing about this 1 in 9 twist is I didn't run into any bullets as I was looking through my collection of different 30 caliber bullets that would not stabilize in a 1 in 9 twist. So this seems like a pretty good twist rate for this cartridge. Could you go a little bit tighter? Could you go faster and go down to a 1 in 8? Probably so. Would it be a big benefit? I'm not sure. If you have thoughts on that, drop a comment. We'll start that discussion. Okay. So we've got a 1 in 9 twist. Our bullets are going to work. What I did as I was breaking in the rifle was I used a variety of different bullets and bullet weights. I shot Sierra 155 grain SMK bullets. Those did really well. The first 3-shot group that I shot after getting on paper was 0.343 inches. And then for shots 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, which is a 5-shot group, that opened up to about 0.660 inches. Remember here we have a carbon wrapped barrel, and sometimes if you're shooting, what was that, 5, 9 shots in relative rapid succession without a break to cool down, sometimes the groups will open up just a little bit. Okay, so I did some more shooting with the 155s, and I determined, you know, it's going to be 0.6 inches probably for 5 shots, somewhere in there. Tried a couple more bullets, including the 208 ELDMs, and the very first group that I shot with the 208 ELDMs went into 0.488 inches. That was 5 shots at 100 yards, and that was, again, in relatively rapid succession. Interestingly, this is a little PSA for you all about checking your suppressor. The suppressor had come loose, and the end cap had also come loose. So it was loose on the barrel, and the end cap was also loose when I checked it after shooting this group, and you can see that opened up quite a bit. So based on my average velocity of 2701, based on the SD of 11.3, and the ES of 32.2, I thought, you know, this is a good load to do a little bit more shooting with. So that's what I'll typically do. I'll take a few different bullets and possibly a couple different powders. I'll shoot some groups, maybe starting with 3-shot groups and then move on to 5-shot groups and figure out what's going to give me the level of precision that I need, it's the diameter of the group, and then what's going to give me the tight velocity spread that I'm looking for. An SD around 10 feet per second is really good for long-range shooting, and that's what I found with the 208s. Some of the other bullets that I tried did not group at all, and this is kind of a common pattern that I've observed more recently, is swapping out bullet skews is probably the quickest way to get to some quick precision. Okay, so we have the 208 ELDM selected. We're going to focus on that a little bit. In terms of powder burn rate, and again, if you go to Hodgdon's Reloading Data Center online, you can find all this information. We're going to be somewhere around Winchester 760, which is number 126 on Hodgdon's burn rate chart at the faster end. And then we're gonna, I did use Ramshot Hunter for the 155 SMK loads. That shot really good. SD was also around 10 and good accuracy there. And kind of H4350 falls somewhere in the middle there. And that's the powder that I selected for use with the Hornady 208s. So you're going to want to look for anecdotal information online about the kind of precision that people are getting and the kind of velocities that people are getting. Lots of different sources of load data online, but ultimately it's about your rifle and it's about your components and what you can achieve. So I take the anecdotal information with a bit of a grain of salt, and then I move on to producing my own firsthand results. So we've got Lapua cases, we've got H4350, We've got Hornady 208 ELDMs, and here I'm using Federal large Magnum rifle primers. Those are the number 215s, right? This is a Magnum cartridge. It uses a Magnum primer, so you're going to need a Magnum large rifle primer for your loading. Okay, so that's a little bit about the background and a little bit about the planning process. The other thing that I did, since I'm using bushing dies, was I did a calculation around which bushing diameter I'm going to use, right? And the basic formula here is you want to take your bullet diameter plus 2 times the brass thickness, because there's one thickness on either side, minus 1/1000th of an inch for press fit for the bullet, if that's the press fit that you desire, minus about 1/1000th of spring back for the brass to come back to a larger diameter after it comes out of the bushing. Now, this is going to depend on a number of factors. If you're annealing with like the Annealing Made Perfect machine, you're going to get hardly any spring back. So you might find that you don't have to account for that. When I take 0.308 bolt diameter plus 0.028 inches, which is 2 times the brass thickness of 14 thousandths that I measured with a ball micrometer, minus 1/1000th for bullet neck tension, minus 1/1000th for spring back, we get 0.334 inches would be the bushing that we need to use. The second method is to just take a loaded round. These are defective rounds where I had excessive neck tension and I have this ring on the bullet. You take a loaded round and just take a micrometer measurement on the neck area, and then you say, that's where I'm going to end up, so how much less than that do I need to account for spring back and that kind of thing, right? So the neck on this measures 0.338 inches, minus 1/1000th for spring back means that we could probably use a 0.337 inch bushing. We did not get the same result here. We got 0.334, 0.337, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the set of bushings and look at what I've got here, right? We've got 0.333, 0.337, and I think we also had 0.335, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the larger number, 0.337, that we calculated from the loaded round, and then I'm going to see if this produces sufficient neck tension, and if it doesn't, then we're going to go down a size. And that should be a pretty good starting point and a pretty good way to figure out where we need to be. Okay, so next we're going to talk about equipment. So why don't we kind of work our way from this side of the bench over to this side of the bench. I've got the competition primer seeder with the Magnum shell holder installed. We've got the RCBS ChargeMaster Link. This is just a good, affordable electronic powder dispenser that's fast and is accurate enough for this kind of work. Potentially not for extreme bench rest situations where we might want to trickle separately and use a more accurate scale, but a really great value and a great piece of equipment. I've got the Forster coax press with the large jaws installed. We've got the datum dial from Forster. This is a tool that we can use to measure shoulder bump. How far back are we pushing the shoulder, boom, when we're sizing? We want that to be tight, but not too tight, right? We want 1/1000th and a half, maybe 2/1000ths of shoulder bump. We've got the neck tension gauge, and this has got multiple bushings on a rod, and they go up in size as you insert the neck tension gauge into the neck. You can see here, we're actually over what was the largest one, is 306. Yeah, so after firing, it's over 306, but after sizing, it should be down there between one of these values. So this is a great way to just get a quick gauge on what your neck sizing is doing and what your effective neck tension is going to be. It's going to kind of complement the planning work that we did, measuring a loaded round and also doing the math with the neck thickness and the bolt diameter to figure out what an optimal bushing is going to be. We've got the full-length sizer, the bushing type from Forster. We've also got an ultra micrometer seeder. This has the sliding collar that's going to help guide the case perfectly straight upward into the die as the bullet is being seated, and that, in my experience, has produced phenomenal bullet run out results. Okay, so that's the equipment. Next, let's go through the process with a single cartridge so that I can demonstrate the process. So we're going to start with sizing and depriming. And here again, we're using the Forster full-length bushing die. We've got the appropriate bushing that we've selected based on the math that we did. So I'm going to remove the decapping spindle. We're going to take a look at our text to make sure that's upright. Drop that in. Okay, I can feel that hit. I'm going to back that off just a touch and then tighten the clamping screw. Got just a tiny bit of rattle. That's the way I like that. That's going to allow that to self-center. Now, these are the Accu-Rings from Forster, which have 1,000th increments that are laser engraved onto the top surface. And then the newer dies are going to have this nice laser engraved line so that we have a reference point. So I'm going to insert the die into the press with the ring kind of lower on the die. And we'll just work this die down until it touches the shell holder as kind of like what I would call an approximate starting point. So we'll select our piece of brass. This is going to be my demo piece here. Before we get to the setup of the sizer, we're going to want to deprime manually here, because before we size, we're going to need to get an accurate measurement with the datum dial. And if there's any, you see how there's a little bit of wobble there, that's a little bit of cratering from the primer protruding back, and that's going to throw off our measurement. So if we just do a simple decap with something like this dedicated decapping die, that's going to remove that as a variable. So I always strive to do that. Now we're going to take the die with the ring lowered, put the crossbolt facing us, and put that into the press and lower it until we can feel it contact the shell plate. Now, this is going to be something where this is an approximate starting point, and this is where we want to make sure that we look at our guide, our chart here, we pick the appropriate diameter. Now for 300 WSM, Forster recommends the 0.420 inch circle, which is this guy right here. So what we're going to do is before we size, we're going to get a 0 here. We're just going to spin that a little bit. Go ahead and 0 the calipers. See if that repeats. That does repeat. Okay. So we have a good 0. Now I'm going to apply some case lube. And we're going to do this on the outside of the case, and then we're also going to roll a Q-tip. This is Imperial case sizing wax, by the way, in case you're wondering. We're going to put that on the inside as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our first sizing. And now we can see what happened to our shoulder bump. It looks like we had a little bit of deformation, so it appeared to lengthen the shoulder a little bit. Let's see if that does what we need that to do. Very smooth. You can feel good surface finish on the interior of that die. Okay, -4.5. So we went a little bit overboard there. So I need to come back a little bit. And this means that since we've pushed the shoulder back too far, we're going to have to start this process over with another decapped case. We're going to have to get another good 0 here. It's worth the tedium here. Okay, that is very consistent. Just makes sense. We've, fire formed the brass. I already backed this off a little bit. Just keeping track of where I'm at here in the process. If we're somewhere around -1.5 or -2, we're good here. -1. So let's give it just a little bit. Still at -1. -2.5. So I would say that we can call that good. We've got our sizer die set up. One more thing that we can do here is we can take our neck tension gauge and see where we're landing there. So it looks like, actually the top line is 307. That's a correction from our previous number there. I think that's worth trying because I can't push the bullet in. So this is minimal neck tension. If you want more neck tension to make sure that the bullets are super secure, then you might want to take it down a step on that. So I'm going to tighten this lock ring. And that's going to preserve our die setup. Okay, so we deprimed, we sized, we confirmed that we have about 0.02 shoulder bump. Now we can go ahead and prime. And then we will prepare for our powder charge. Okay, so our powder charge is 61 grains, so we're just going to type that in and hit go. Okay, powder charge is done. Now we can drop this in. Now I wish I had saved one of my 208s because now we're ready to seat bullets, and I'm going to have to start a little bit long and then calculate how long I need to go. Not a problem. We have a micrometer die. That should be pretty easy. Okay, so for the setup of the seater, we're just going to remove our sizer, take our ultra micrometer, and get this ready to go. So we're going to want to have this not completely bottomed out onto the shell plate. Back that out a bit. With the scale facing us, I think we can go down a little bit further than that. Okay. Yeah, something like that is going to work. So I'm going to just proactively tighten the cross bolt on that to preserve the die body setting, and then we'll go ahead and manipulate the micrometer so that we get this to the place that we want it. We do want to make sure that the micrometer scale is facing us so that when we're making adjustments, we can tell where we're at. Okay. All right, so back things off a little bit and then go ahead and seat our bullet. Okay, let's see where we're at. We're going to take the datum dial off. We're going to re-zero the calipers, and we want to be at about 2.840. We're at 3 inches. So we need to go down a bit. I think that's going to get us close. .9840, so we need, so about 76 down. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 60, 65. Okay, that's close. I tend to be a bit conservative on this because if you overshoot, then you kind of need to pull the bullet, right? 853, so we need 13 down. 5, 10, 13. That should be about where we need to be right there. Okay, so there it is. We're within 1/1000 for this ammunition. That's going to be plenty good. If you want to get real particular, you might want to look at our 3 ways to find the lands video and do something like the Loctite trick to figure out what your actual at lands distance is. How far is the bullet extended when it's just touching the rifling, right? And then you could maybe subtract 20/1000 of an inch from that and seat it just a little bit deeper so that you have room there. Okay, so that was the process for loading a single round, including the die setups. Now I'm going to repeat the process and load some ammo to go and shoot. Okay, so I went through that same process. We've got some ammunition now. I think it's time to go long range shooting. Well, this has been awesome. 300 Winchester Short Magnum packs a lot of punch into a small package. So here's what I'd like to know from you is, first off, was this helpful? I went a little bit more in depth on some of the planning here and some of the details. You know, we went end to end on the actual process. We demonstrated some results. Another question for you is, what have your experiences been with 300 WSM? Are you using it for long range shooting or for hunting or for both? Have you had particularly good results with a particular powder or bullet? Drop a comment and we'll start that discussion. Thank you very much for watching. That concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're watching Ultimate Reloader on TV and want to take advantage of free resources, exclusives, and hot deals, just hold your camera phone up to the QR code, tap on the link, fill out the information, boom, you're getting Ultimate Reloader emails. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. Thanks again for watching.